Hello, good morning, early birds. Are you here with me? Is anyone here with me? Because I am on. This is Dr. Annette Feravich, and I am here in the classroom. Why would I be here in the classroom? Because I'm the teacher. That's why I'm here in the classroom. Thank you for joining me if you are here. If you noticed, open that up just about right on time today on a Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Even though I wasn't here right away. But I do have everything that we need to get started this week, a brand new week, and we are on day 28. I am so excited about that. So a quarter of the way to 100, now over a quarter of a way to 100, right? 25 is 1/4 of 100. We'll do maybe some special things on day 100 is probably what we'll do. That's usually what they do in school if I remember correctly. Some things, that were special on day 100. How do I not have the book? Oh, I do. Never mind. So, not be right back today. Today, let's start with our tip number 3, right? We said that we were going to do tips in the early bird classroom from this book, 101 Ways to Improve Your Grammar Skills, right? And there's tip number 3 there. So I am so happy for this book that has no author. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Chris Hirschman. Illustrated by Barbara Levy. Oh, it's even illustrated. Where? Oh, there's a picture. Illustrated means that somebody who drew the pictures. So there's a picture right there, right? So illustrated by... Who did I just say? Barbara Levy? No. Yes, Barbara Levy. Which reminds me, don't have my glasses and can't read, but those are right upstairs. I just had them last night. And Chris Hirschman. So thank you for this book. It is a wonderful book. Tip number 3, get the help of a friend. And this is something that you do all the time in school. And for anything, and here's the thing, for everything, we need the phone number of somebody that we can call, right? And you know what I was going to say? And sometimes it feels really hard to get somebody's phone number, but it's really not anymore, is it? Nobody, you know what's really hard? To give somebody a card. That's what's hard, to give somebody a business card. But they're all like this. Ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding. Right? So everyone knows how to get a phone number. And then get a phone number from somebody that you feel is pretty smart as well, right? That would probably be pretty helpful. And then that way they can read your work and your ideas. Here's one of the problems with as you get older and you begin to write more. One of the problems is that you think that because it's you know it, that everybody else knows what you're saying. So the first time that you write, you go and write, your first edit might be read it out loud. I had to do that with one of my students once before. Read his or her paper out loud so that they heard what they were saying, right? And that's okay. That's how we basically edit things to see whether or not those things sound like they're supposed to sound, right? And if they said everything they're supposed to say, okay? So we need the help of a friend to listen to the story. Sometimes we can do that ourselves and listen. That might be the first step. But they listen to the story. If they're good at grammar, they can edit, right? And they can cross things out or whatever, help you along in that way. Or if you're in class, they can get your books for you, make sure that you have all the homework assignments, right? So this is a really good idea to not just get a buddy in your telephone or in your phone, in your cell, not to just, or whatever you guys call it, whatever, in your phone, right? It's not just to get a phone number for somebody who's a buddy, but actually somebody that can help you. And if you offer to help that person in the same way, well, then that person is benefiting from helping you as well, right? Okay, all right. I did run upstairs and get my glasses. That's what I had to do. So let me go run upstairs and get my glasses and Hopefully that signal will stop dropping frames. I'll be right back. I see Xfinity is once again dropping a whole bunch of frames, not making me very happy here. But what was I going to show you here? None of those books. Oh, I know what it was. This book here. Join me a little bit later on. All day today, I have new books. So today, if you want to join me for the Bookless classroom, we're going to be reading about California. I know this book looks really old, and guess what? It is. This book is from 1944, I think it is. And look at how beautiful the pictures are. Yeah, 1944. I think I showed this to one of the classrooms the other day, probably the Bookless classroom. Look at that. Somebody checked this out. Look at that. Somebody checked it out of the library in 1952, if you can believe that. So I'm going to be reading this book about California in our next class, the Bookless classroom, where we still have books, but you don't need the books. Sometimes I give you guys ideas for books, right, to bring to, but most of the time you don't need books. But it would be great if you guys printed out those worksheets, and I'm not getting too many requests for those worksheets, so I hope that you are doing those worksheets the way that you're supposed to. Phonics Days on Wednesday, we'll talk more about how you're supposed to be doing those worksheets, but you have to do them because it's not just enough to watch it on a video. That's why this is the learning curve for you guys. You guys are like this. No, that's not exactly correct, but you get the drift. You get the idea. You guys aren't learning as much as you're supposed to be learning. And that's because you don't have learning skills. If you're not learning what you're supposed to be learning, you need learning skills. A lot of it's not, oh, you need to be smarter. A lot of it just is skills to learn better, all right? So I tell you those along the way. So make sure that you're doing those, right? Like these skills that we have here or those tips that we're using, right? Okay, so we will not be reading from our Reader's Digest Bible for Children today. We're not reading from this one. And the reason why is because this one has a lot of really good stories. But the Old Testament, it kind of goes through the Old Testament pretty quickly. And most of this book is about the New Testament. So for some of these Old Testament stories, I wanted more of them. And so what I did is, as you probably know, I have been also using the Children's Illustrated Bible as well. And so this one I'm going to be using because Reader's Digest version of the Bible skipped a very important character whose name is Joseph. Now, the reason why Joseph is such an important character, and if you remember, we did talk about Joseph already in our Tales of Virtue. And this is in one of the very first classes. It might even be the first class. The very first class, because it is the very first story in here in the Tales of Virtue story, which is about Joseph, and it was about forgiveness. And so I'm going to give you a little reminder of that story by showing you the pictures here of Joseph. And if you remember his coat of many colors, right? And there's a family picture right there, right? Because if you remember, he had 11 brothers. And his father was Jacob. So Jacob, that we talked about last time, with Jacob's ladder, and he had the dream of the angels going up and down the ladder, if you remember, right? So we had that picture of those angels going up and down the ladder. I don't think I have that in the slide, but I probably have it somewhere right over here. Is probably what I do. Oh, look at that. I bumped right into that too. I wonder if I do have Jacob's ladder here. Oh, that's not the right one. Oh boy. No, it can't be in that one. That's not even Jacob. Yeah, but I talked about it someplace else. It doesn't matter. Let's get back to class over here because we've got a lot to do today. So that's what we're going to do. Get back to class. But there is a lot of story about Jacob that we missed and didn't talk about. And some of those things that we didn't talk about, and actually we'll go through them actually a little bit more just because we have to review Jacob's ladder today, all right? So we'll be reviewing Jacob's ladder. So what are we doing today? So Joseph and the 12 tribes of Israel is what we're going to be talking about. And we're going to be going over, where are my glasses? Jacob's dream, which was about Jacob's ladder. Now we talked a lot about the background of Jacob. So we gave you I talked about and gave you some background on Jacob. But again, this children's illustrated Bible goes into a much deeper look at Jacob. So here we have Isaac and Rebekah, which we talked about because Isaac was Jacob's father. And if you remember, the God we believe in is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So who was Isaac's father? Abraham. Okay? All right. So we have Abraham, who is the father of many. And remember, we talked about those promises that God made, that Abraham would have many descendants, that he would have his own land, that his people would have a great name, and that they would have great blessings. Those were the 4 promises that God gave to Abraham. But he said he had to wait 400 years for that promise to come, for them to get the land. That's how long they had to wait. So here we have, he had a son, Isaac. And if you remember, they had twins, Esau and Jacob. Remember, we talked about that. And Jacob, Esau was supposed to come out first, the leg first, and he did. But Jacob grabbed him by the heel, apparently, and pulled him back in and then came out. So there's always been a rivalry. Like, have you ever had, like, you have a brother or a sister that you fight with a lot? That was exactly Esau and Jacob in the Bible. And so here we have got a story about how they were always fighting and what happened between them. And mom favored Jacob and dad favored Esau because Esau was a hunter and Jacob liked to work next to his mom in the kitchen. Maybe you have brothers or sisters that are different from you in those kinds of ways, right? Then we've got here, and then again, this is from the Children's Illustrated Bible. Then they've got the dream, because what happens? Jacob leaves his brother because he's afraid that his brother is going to kill him because of what Jacob kept doing, which was tricking his brother. That's what he kept doing. Jacob kept tricking his brother. And so Jacob had the dream with the angels going up and down the ladders. I'm going to see if we had a story about Jacob, but I don't think that we did in our Tales of Virtue, because he probably wouldn't have been very virtuous. No, we did not. Because he wasn't. He was a troublemaker is what he was. That's why his brother Esau was like, because Jacob was such a troublemaker for his brother, right? Even from the time that they were in their mother's womb, from the very time they were together as twins in their mother's womb, Jacob caused Esau trouble. But it goes to show you that even if you're a troublemaker, you still could be the chosen one, as Jacob was. Who are our fathers in the Bible? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Our God, our Christian God, is a God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So, who is Jacob? Jacob is the troublemaker who is still part of our forefathers from a long time ago, long before the United States was even here. And then Jacob married Rachel, and they had, and it's a little more complicated, but they had 12 sons. Jacob had 12 sons. And one of those sons' name was Joseph. And that's where we'll pick up the story now about Joseph. Okay? Oh, and Esau and Jacob, they got back together, by the way. And Esau wasn't mad at Jacob any longer. So that's really, really nice. All right, so what we're going to start with is the very first story, because there are actually several stories about Joseph and his 11 brothers. So Jacob had 12 sons. Now's the time for the glasses. And Joseph was one of his 12 sons. And in fact, Joseph was Jacob's favorite. And so you could see that these people played a lot of favorites, which isn't very nice for the ones who aren't favored. And we're going to see that front and center in this story. What do we mean by front and center? We mean that it's coming up right away how the brothers were mean to Joseph, but why? Because he was always his mom and dad's favorite. So, lesson number 1 of the story, don't play favorites. That is a good lesson. As moms and dads, we have to not play favorites. And you can ask me, I have 2 boys, did I play favorites? If you were to ask them, they would say yes. I'm sure that they would say yes. But you love your kids differently. And so, but I don't think that I did. I really do think that I did not. I worked harder for a relationship with one than the other, but that's because I had to work harder for that relationship. The other one was easier. So, what does that mean? I don't know. Joseph's dream. This is from Genesis chapter 37 is what it's from. So the book in the Bible is the book of Genesis is what it's from. Jacob lived in Canaan with his 12 sons. So see, Jacob, and he lived in Canaan with his 12 sons. That Canaan is the promised land, the land that is being promised to Abraham. So Jacob is in this land, but then they're going to have to go. Then they're going to have to go later on. Of all his sons, he loved Joseph the most. See? Mistake numero uno. As his mother was his beloved wife, Rachel. And that's the reason why. Because Rachel had a problem having kids. So Rachel had kids in a different way. Through a surrogate is what we call it. Through another mother. And that's very hard when you want to have children. And her first child that she ever had was Joseph. And he was child number 11. So you can see why Joseph might have been their favorite, right? He loved Rachel the best. He made Joseph a beautiful coat woven in all the brilliant colors of the rainbow. Jacob's other sons were jealous of Joseph because he was so favored. And when they saw him in his coat of many colors, they hated him. One night, Joseph had a dream. And when he told his brothers his dream, they hated Joseph even more. I dreamed, he said, that we were in the fields at harvest, tying up sheaves of wheat. I don't think they have a picture of tying up sheaves of wheat. But the wheat stalks would be like this, and you basically tie them together. Kind of in some ways like you see hay bales, in a way. If you're in the country and you see bales of hay in the fields. My sheaf of wheat stood upright while your sheaves bowed down to it. Soon afterwards, Joseph had another dream. I dreamed, he said, that the sun and moon in the sky and 11 stars were all bowing down to me. He thinks, his dreams show that he thinks very highly of himself, doesn't he? So they've got sheaves that are bowing down to him, wheat, and now they've got the sun and the moon and the stars. And there's 11 stars and 11 brothers of Joseph. When the brothers heard his words, they were furious. A few days later, they took their flocks to graze in the fields some distance away. Jacob sent Joseph to see that all was well. The brothers had a clear view of the road and saw Joseph approaching in his multicolored coat. Now is our chance. We could kill him and throw him into this pit. We can say that the wild animals attacked him. But Reuben, who had a kind heart, spoke out. Don't let us kill him. We don't want his blood on our hands. Much better just to throw him into the pit and leave him to his fate. I don't know if that's nicer. I'm not sure if that's a kind heart. And to this the brothers agreed, not knowing that secretly Reuben was planning to return later, rescue Joseph, and take him home. When Joseph reached them, his brothers attacked him at once, ripping off his coat and throwing him into the pit. They left him there without food or water. Then they sat down to eat. At twilight, a group of Ishmaelites came by. They were on their way to Egypt with camels loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh. Judah suggested that they sell Joseph as a slave to the travelers. Then they would be rid of their brother they hated without having to kill him. So Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver, and the Ishmaelites took him with them into Egypt. Meanwhile, the brothers killed a young kid and dipped Joseph's coat. A young kid is a baby goat. Not a kid, but a young kid is a baby goat. All right? And dipped Joseph's coat into its blood. Their father was filled with horror when they showed it to him. This is Joseph's coat. My beloved son must have been killed by some wild beast. Joseph tore his clothes in grief and wept, and no one was able to comfort him. And then there are some really nice pictures of some of the things that they traded with the travelers who were trading there. And some of the nice pictures then that show a little bit of a storyline there. This is a little bit longer story, and since I'm having also a pretty bad connection here, I want to keep going with the story. Although I'm really upset. I don't know why I'm getting such a bad connection. There should be no excuse for that. There is no excuse for that. Joseph the slave. So they sold him to travelers, and now we see Joseph is a slave, right? Okay. All right, so which picture can you see best? Yeah, that one. Okay. When the Ishmaelites arrived in Egypt, they sold Joseph to one of the Pharaoh's officers, Potiphar, captain of the guard. Joseph worked hard for Potiphar, who was so impressed by his skills that he made him head of his household. So that's pretty good. Joseph is a good man because no matter who he's working for, he's still working very hard, right? Now Joseph was a handsome young man, and before long, he caught the eye of Potiphar's wife. She tried very hard to seduce him, but Joseph resisted her. That means that she wanted to kiss him, basically, right? And she was married to Potiphar. So you could see that this is really putting Joseph in a really bad position, right? Some of these stories are a little bit, hey, what's going on here? What's going on here? You're supposed to believe in God. What's going on here? But the Egyptians did not. They did not, right? So, but Joseph did. So let's see what Joseph did. Your husband trusts me, he said. You cannot ask me to betray him. Potiphar's wife did not care for her husband or for Joseph's objections. Objections are Joseph was saying no, right? Sometimes you object to what your parents say and you say no, right? That's an objection. Sometimes we see in court, I object, right? So you're objecting, you're saying, no, Your Honor, no. That's not right, okay? Day after day, she lay in wait, teasing and tempting him, and still he refused her. Then one day in desperation, she cornered Joseph and caught hold of him by the sleeve of his coat. But Joseph was too quick for her, and he made his escape. So that's that picture right there of her kind of grabbing at him, and see, she's got his cover there, and then he kind of runs out. But Joseph was too quick for her and made his escape, leaving her with nothing but an empty garment in her hand. Then Potiphar's wife summoned all the servants. Look what this Hebrew tried to do, she said, because he was an Israelite. These are Ishmaelites. Ishmaelites are from Ishmael, right? Who was who? Hagar's son, right? Because if you remember, with Abraham and Sarah, Sarah had Isaac, but Abraham had Ishmael from another mother, right? As sometimes happens, right? So all of Ishmael's descendants are the Egyptians, Ishmaelites, and all of Isaac's descendants are Israelites, all right? Or as they are also called, Hebrews or Jews. They're also called Jews. Hebrews are called Jews as well. So look what he did. He tried to do, she said, holding up Joseph's coat. He forced his way into my bedroom, and then I cried out. And when I cried out, he fled, leaving his coat behind. So basically, she's not telling the truth, is she, about what really happened? When her husband came home, he was told the same false story. Potiphar, enraged, immediately had Joseph thrown into prison. Fortunately, however, the jailer took a liking to the young man and put him in charge of all the other prisoners. So even when bad things are happening, when God he's like, you're my person, you're my example. Like we said, Abraham said that was going to happen, that they were going to be the example. I'm going to go this way, right? Yeah, so I'm moving over. Not that this should be so difficult, but this is a better way for you guys to see this. And then what? And then you turn it like this. There we go. We'll keep the flowers in it. Well, maybe we can't. Okay, now you can see this picture a little bit better. Here's where I'm reading. Okay? All right. So I got to bring it down, though, because I can't see if it's not. There we go. I'm like, why are you holding it up way up here, Dad? I don't know. I just don't know. Well, it's kind of hard to see. All right, so which one are we looking at? Right here. Okay, all right. So it so happened that in the prison with Joseph were Pharaoh's cupbearer and royal baker. So the Pharaoh, the king, had a cupbearer is somebody who would taste his drinks and his meals before he did, in case they were poisoned, because a lot of people wanted to be king. And so sometimes they would poison the stuff that the king had or ate, right? Not very often, but the king could afford a cupbearer, right? He could afford it. So as long as he could afford it, he might as well have a cupbearer, right? And a baker. So right? If you're a king, you of course had somebody in the kitchen, and it was the baker. And so who even knows why the cupbearer and the baker are in prison? Maybe they tried to poison the king. Who knows? I don't know. Okay, let's see here. So one night, each of them had a dream, the cupbearer and the baker. Each had a dream, which in the morning they asked Joseph to explain. In my dream, said the cupbearer, I had a vine with 3 branches bearing ripe grapes. I squeezed the juice from the grapes into a cup which I gave Pharaoh to drink. Your dream, said Joseph, means that in 3 days Pharaoh will pardon you. So he's going to get out of jail. The cupbearer is going to get out of jail. I, said the baker, dreamed that I had 3 baskets of bread. I, said the baker, dreamed that I had 3 baskets of bread for Pharaoh stacked on my head, and a flock of birds flew down and ate every crumb. Joseph looked grave. I am sorry to say that your dream means that in 3 days Pharaoh will have you hanged, will have you killed, right? He's a prisoner. That's what they used to do. And that's what they still sometimes do with prisoners today, right? And it happened just as Joseph said. Within 3 days, the cupbearer was restored to his job while the baker was hanged. So Joseph knows how to interpret dreams, right? Now comes Pharaoh's dream. Switch sides. I shouldn't move my chair. I should just move this. There we go. Okay. 2 years had passed and still Joseph was in jail. Now, this is kind of interesting. Here, I'm reading from here. This is kind of interesting because Joseph was supposed to get out of jail. The cupbearer and the baker were supposed to speak nicely about Joseph for interpreting his dream, and they forgot to do that. And so Joseph stayed in jail for 2 more years. That's a long, long time. But the cupbearer and the baker remembered that Joseph interpreted the dream when Pharaoh had a dream. Then one night Pharaoh had a strange dream. He was standing by the river Nile, and while he watched, 7 cows, fat and healthy, came out of the water to feed. A while later, 7 thin cows came out of the river, so lean and bony they could barely stand. The thin cows ate up the fat cows. Pharaoh woke up with a start. That's a startle. We've talked about that before. He woke up with a startle. One of the interesting things about the skinny cows that ate the fat cows, they didn't get any fatter. They were still skinny. You'd think that skinny cows ate the fat cows, they'd be like, burr, but they weren't. They missed that part in the story. They were still skinny. Then Pharaoh woke up with a start. Then he fell asleep and dreamed again. This time he saw 7 ears of wheat growing plump and golden on a single stalk. Then he saw 7 shriveled ears of wheat, which ate up the 7 large ears. So there we've got a picture of the cows, and there we have the wheat right there. Okay, they're really small pictures, and they're just pictures of cows and wheat, nothing else exciting going on there. In the morning, Pharaoh demanded that someone be found to explain his dreams. Apparently, you can do that as a king. Demand somebody to explain my dreams to me. All the wise men and magicians were brought before Pharaoh, but no one could tell him the meaning of his dreams. I think you can see it pretty well. Just like this, just a little bit. Is that the right way? Yeah, I think so. There we go. How's that? It was then that the cupbearer remembered Joseph and told Pharaoh how he had correctly interpreted both his and the baker's dreams. Joseph was immediately released from prison and brought before Pharaoh. After thinking for a moment, Joseph said, "God has revealed to me what your dreams mean. Egypt is about to enjoy 7 years of great plenty. So to be followed by 7 years of terrible famine. Famine is when there people are starving, right? So we're experiencing some starvation, some famine across the planet here now because some people don't have food, right? So that's famine. Famine means they are starving. I think that's better. There we go. Pharaoh was so impressed by Joseph that he decided to promote him to the higher office. Pulling the ring from his own finger, he gave it to Joseph. Then he hung a heavy gold chain about his neck and dressed him in fine linen robes. He presented him with a magnificent chariot. "You shall be ruler of the whole of Egypt," he declared. Second, right? He had his brothers who hated him and who were jealous of him throw him into that pit and then sell him to travelers, right? And then he became a slave. And even though he was Pharaoh's highest ranking official, when Pharaoh's wife blamed him for something he didn't do, he went to jail, and obviously for more than 2 years as well, right? Now he's out of jail here, and he gets now to be in charge of all of Egypt. What an amazing story of Joseph's life, right? Under Joseph's supervision, grain was gathered and stored during 7 years of good harvest. Then, when the lean years arrived, there was more than enough for all. There was so much that people came from distant lands to buy grain, for the famine was everywhere. So that was really important for the Pharaoh to know, wasn't it? It was really important for Pharaoh to know that they were going to have 7 years of plenty followed by famine, starvation, so he could save up the grain. Very smart of Pharaoh, and also very smart of Pharaoh to go find somebody to tell him what the dreams meant, right? Because people really back in the day really did believe that dreams meant something, and apparently they did. Do you think that dreams mean something? I do, but I didn't used to. It's only been recently that I think that they mean something. Although I think now that I think back, they always have meant something. I think Joseph the governor, the famine had spread to Canaan. So that's where Joseph used to live, remember? That's where Jacob lived. That's where Jacob was. And his 12 boys, right? So that's where Joseph used to live, in Canaan, and that's where his brothers sold him was from Canaan, the land of Canaan. Joseph's father Jacob saw that his people were hungry, so he sent 10 of his sons to Egypt to buy wheat. He kept Benjamin, his beloved youngest son, at home with him. So here Jacob plays favorites again, first with Joseph and then with Benjamin. Benjamin also was Jacob's son with his wife Rachel. So that's why and Benjamin were favored, because they were the real children of Rachel. The other ones were not. They were from different mothers, all from Jacob, but with different mothers. So you can see, even in God's family, you didn't all have to come from the same mother. You can see that they have a very non-traditional family, different mothers, same father, a mixed family, just like we kind of see here today, right? The brothers, Joseph's father Jacob, saw that his people were hungry, so he sent 10 of his sons to Egypt to buy wheat. He kept Benjamin, his beloved youngest son, at home with him. I already read that. The brothers set off on their journey from Canaan to Egypt. They found their way to the governor, who was their beloved brother Joseph. Once in his presence, they knelt humbly before him. their faces pressed to the ground. Joseph knew at once who they were, but they did not recognize Joseph in his fine clothes. Joseph spoke accusingly. You are spies coming here to spy on Egypt. No, they protested. We came from Canaan. We are from Canaan, come here to buy grain. That's what it says. We are 12, but the youngest is at home with our father, and one of us is dead. Why should I believe you? Joseph demanded. You must prove you are not spies. You shall return to Canaan to fetch the youngest. Then I will know if you are telling the truth. He wanted to see his brother Benjamin. That was the reason why Joseph sent them back. He wanted to see his only real brother, right? The real brother from the same mother and father. So that's why he sent them back. They didn't know he was Joseph, right? But Joseph sent them back so that they could go get his little brother Benjamin. He wanted to see Benjamin. Isn't that nice that he wanted to see his little brother Benjamin? I think it is. All right, let's see what we got going on here. But first Joseph had the brothers thrown into prison for 3 days. He's being pretty rough with his brothers, but I guess it's kind of fair, right? His brothers were pretty rough with him too, right? Yeah, so I guess it's kind of being fair. I'll put that like that. Then you can see a little bit better. Take this wheat back to your land, he said, but bring your youngest brother here, or I shall have all of you put to death. And to make sure you obey me, I shall keep one of you here as hostage. The brothers trembled. They felt guilty and believed that this was a punishment for the way they had treated Joseph. And it was, basically. As they whispered among themselves, Joseph listened, silently weeping at the sight of their frightened faces. So this is really touching Joseph's heart. Joseph really has a big heart, even for his brothers who weren't so nice to him, right? I got to get this chair right. Oh, that's the problem right there. Squishing a book. Okay, now you can see that book page a little bit better. I'll move it like this. There we go. Let's see. He had spoken through an interpreter and knew they did not realize he could understand everything they said. Suddenly he gave the order for one of the brothers, Simeon, to be bound in front of them and put in jail. Then he had the sacks of the others filled with wheat and the silver they had brought to pay for it securely replaced. Lastly, he gave them food before sending them on their way. So Joseph is being very generous, isn't he? Overnight on the journey home, one of the brothers opened the sack to get wheat for his donkey and saw the returned silver. What does this mean? They asked each other nervously. Once back in Canaan, they told Jacob everything. My children are being taken away from me. First Joseph, then Simeon, said Jacob, and now you want to take Benjamin. But you shall not take my youngest from me. If harm came to him, I would go to my grave in sorrow. Of course he would. That was his favorite. Okay, we are going to have to finish the last story of Joseph and get to our questions on Thursday. So we've got phonics tomorrow, right? Don't forget that Wednesday is our phonics day. And let's get the flowers in there, shall we? Wednesday's our phonics day. And then Thursday, we will get to the questions and the last story here. So likely on Thursday, I probably will not read a new story because I already still have a page of that. So you can see how much deeper that this story goes into Joseph's life than we saw in that first book that we read about Joseph for sure, this Tales of Virtue. But it makes it really interesting to see that some of these stories are, first of all, they could be really kind of very, very exciting stories, kind of like some of the shows that maybe that you watch that are exciting, right? Or some of the Disney shows that you watch and that you like that are very exciting. There's a great plot here. And we're going to find out on Thursday if everything turns out okay for Joseph, for his little brother Benjamin, and how about for the other 10 brothers as well. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. I am the teacher, and you are here in the classroom, and we are studying about Joseph and his 12 tribes. I will see you tomorrow for phonics. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about compound words, probably something else, but tomorrow, compound words. So join me. Thanks for joining me. I will see you then, I hope.